This video is going to show you how to prepare a print for printing. The three main areas that I use to do this are levels, curves, and the hue saturation. If you go into Photoshop, you will usually find these three controls under Image, Adjustments, and you will have your levels, your curves, and just down a bit your hue and saturation. However, these three are destructive forms. In other words, if you use them on an image and save that image, you cannot go back and undo them. So before we go into that, we're going to just talk a bit about layers. You can see up to the right here we have two layers here. One is the background image of the bird and the other is the cutout of the bird. We cannot see the cutout of the bird because it's exactly on top of where the bird is. So if we turn off the background image, you will see the bird there. If we click on the bird image and move it, you can see that this is the image on top of another one. So every layer that you do is basically on top of the one below it. You can reorder the layers. For example, I can get the bird and put it below the background image, and it is now behind the background image. We can't see it. If I were to resize the background image, for example, just to make it smaller, the cutout bird layer is underneath it. So the order of the layers will determine which can be seen and which cannot be seen. So let's put them back to where they were. This is the image we're going to adjust. Over here we will go into the right hand side where it says layers, click on it and it will open up our layer panel. In this image there's only one layer. We will go down to the create new fill or adjustment layer, click on it, and we will go to our levels, and you will see that this will open up a new layer above our image. This shows you that this is working on the layer below. So if we adjust anything in this layer, this pop-up panel here, it will adjust the image. And as you can see, if we drag these sliders across to the middle, it will bring the full range of our histogram. That this level here of white that was up at 255 is brought down to 210. That means anything at this is now our full white range. Again, if we move the middle gray of this level, it will show that the dark images in the sign, look at the yield for example, they will become brighter and more towards middle gray. So everything from this point to 0 is black, and everything from this point up to 210 is from middle gray to white. So let's put that back where it was. So we can close this property window. Now what this means is, if you go back to our levels 1 here, we can click that off and we get back to our original image. In other words, this is a non-destructive way of working with levels. If we save this image and come back into it, these levels will still be here, but we'll still be able to turn them on and off. So once I've done that, the next thing I do is I go into curves. So curves is like the contrast. And in curves we have, as you do in levels, but we have the red, green and blue all together are each of the red, the green or the blue channels. For this demonstration we're only going to stay with the red, green, blue channel. So what this means is this line goes from black all the way up to white, and everything below the line will mean that you're making it less contrasty, and everything above the line will make it more contrasty. So all you have to do is go over the line until it becomes this pointer, and then click on the mouse and it'll leave a little dot there, as you can see. And if you grab that dot and move it up, you can see there's less contrast in it. These areas of shadow have become brighter, and these areas of brightness have become brighter. If you go down the other way, it'll show you that these areas of shadow have become darker and these areas of brightness have become darker. I'll move that over a bit. So usually what you want to do is get a nice contrast. In this image, if we bring the whites up there, the whites of the trees, if you bring them up, they're too high there. So for this image we just want to bring them maybe up a little bit. And down on this image in the shadows, you just want to maybe bring this down here and get a nice big contrast. we close that as well. So again, we can turn this on and off and see what it was like. We can turn the curves on and turn the levels off and see what it was like without one or without both. So we can turn each on or off and we can see how each of them responds. If we want to go back into the levels, for example, and readjust it, we just double click on that and the levels opens up again. So the final thing that I would do then is to go into the hue and saturation. So for this example, the first thing that I do in the saturation, I would never use it in this master level, because the master level will just either drag everything less saturated or more saturated. And usually what you want to do is saturate different parts of the level. So the background is mainly made up of blue with the sky and the shadows. So what I will do, I will go to the blues in this, and the first thing I do to see what happens is I will get the saturation and I will put it all the way up to see what is affected just in the blue channel. And as you can see, not only is the sky affected, but the shadows are affected. Even though back here it mightn't look like it, they are full of blue in the image. So to make the signpost stand out, I'm just going to pull this down a little bit to give it less intensity in the background. But there's also the cyan or cyan, and again we can pull that up and you'll see the cyan is also in the shadows, it's in the sky as well. So we can maybe, if you pull it right down, we're kind of getting almost black and white background in the sky. So we want a little bit of color in it. Let's leave it around there. So now I want to work on the poster, the signpost itself, and kind of bring that to the fore. So I know that's made up of yellows and reds by the look of it. So I will go to the reds first, and again the first thing I do, I will pump that up to see what's going to affect it by reds. And as you can see, not only is the signpost affected, but also the trees. And that's probably because the sunlight, the low sunlight, which is a red light, is landed on that part of the trees and therefore brighten them all up. So we want to bring the yellow in the front around the sign, just maybe up a little bit without putting too much effect into the background of the trees. And then we will go into the yellows. And again, the same with the yellows. You can see how it affects the background. So we want to be careful. You might even want to pull it down if you want. Check it both ways. As you can see, this might be an image you're looking for, but it's not really real. We want to keep it somewhat real. So we want to keep some of that yellow in there. And as I said, we want to bring out the sign to pop out from the background a bit. So in this case, I might bring this down a little bit. So we'll say we're happy with that. That's the kind of image that I'm looking for. So as you can see, we're back with our hue and saturation. We can turn these on and off at will. So that is then just the hue and saturation, what it would look like without the others. That's the curves, the hue and saturation. That's the curves alone. That's the levels and the curves. That's the levels alone. That's the hue and saturation and the levels. And that's all three of them again. So as you can see, from the original image to what we've done here, we've changed it quite dramatically. And again, this is all subjective to how you want your image looking. They are mostly the only three things you need to get your image ready for print: your levels, your curves, your hue and your saturation. And by using them here in this new fill or adjustment layer means that your non-destructive way of using the images. And just one final thing is, if we go back to this other image we have and just take this cutout bird, we copy that and bring it into this other image. You will see when I bring it in, the layer comes above those images below it, which means those layers do not affect the bird. They're only affecting the image below them. So if I resize this bird just a little bit, and he's sitting there on the thing, so he has not been affected, that bird has not been affected at all by the levels. But if I were to pull it down here, then you see the way it changes, that bird, the beak is orange, it's less. So everything below those adjustments layer affects both the bird and the background image together. and I can pull it back up, and it would be just the hue and saturation that would adjust the bird layer, while all three would affect the layer below it. But as you can see, there's many other attributes that are available, but they're the same as all appear in the adjustments channel. They're almost all the same ones available, except, as I said, they are non-destructive. So this is the way that you manipulate the image color before print. These three adjustment layers will still be here, and I can still turn them on and off and still work on my original image if need be.